Hi, everybody, and welcome to our webinar today, where we're lucky enough to be joined by one of our industry gold sponsors, NiCE, and the always engaging Ben Hancock, Manager Customer Service Automation at NiCE. Today's session is going to be a really interesting one. It's all about putting people at the heart of your AI strategy. And we'll talk with Ben about ways to really make that business case for a culture-led, human-centered AI strategy that gives the improved performance, accelerates transformation, and drives smarter service outcomes at scale. In the spirit of reconciliation, Auscontact acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. Today's webinar will run for approximately 60 minutes, and during that time, with the help of Ben, we hope this session provides some really interesting insights into ways you can continue to focus on getting the balance right between the tech and the people component and the culture within your organisation that can really support those improvements across the board. To round off the session, we'll have Q&A at the end of the webinar. So I'm Fran Southwood, CEO of Auscontact, and your moderator for today. We'll just run through a few quick housekeeping elements with you. Remember to interact with us today to get the very most out of this session. It's not often you have an expert at your fingertips, so make sure that you ask those hard questions or even just give us some comments in the chat, and let's put Ben to the test. Use the QA and the chat feature on the control panel. As I said, ask questions as we go. If the questions are relevant to what Ben's actually talking about, I'll jump in and we'll ask it there and then. If it's something that's more general in nature, we'll leave it till the end of the session. If you're listening through headsets or speakers and have any issues, just use the raise hand button on the panel, and one of the team will jump in and help. Alternatively, you can actually use the dial-in numbers that were on your registration. I'd like to now formally introduce our speaker for today. Ben Hancock is the Customer Service Manager, Customer Service Automation at NiCE. And Ben, you're going to tell us a little bit about what that means. Thanks for joining us. So much to talk about this in this space. And I love the opportunity to really talk about that balance. And I know when you talk about this, you get really passionate about having culture as the foundation of AI adoption. So I love that. So welcome, Ben. And I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you, Fran. It's good to be back on another Auscontact webinar. Lots has changed since we last spoke, and as you might sort of notice on the screen, we are now NiCE Cognigy, and so we cannot talk about AI. We can't even talk about putting people at the center of AI without at least touching on Cognigy, the new acquisition, agentic AI agents. What does it all mean? And what does it mean for the people on this webinar as well? I've been working in conversational AI now for around 8 years, since we first had transformers come in and we could recognize cats versus dolphins from images. And since then, the world has changed pretty dramatically since 2017. So what I want to do today is give a little bit of an update on Cognigy, a bit of an overview. I've also got a little bit of a video, Fran, that we can play that shows what that actually looks like from a customer experience perspective. Because I think that, talking about AI can be this really obtuse concept that we know AI is there. We know that AI is coming. We need to figure out how to use AI. But what is AI? What does it mean? What's agentic? What's an AI agent? And what are the differences between what we have access to now in the world of large language models versus, what we've had with previous chatbots or voice agents that, frustrate the hell out of us, right? And make us not want to talk to AI ever again. So that's really what I'm going to be focusing on. Of course, please, happy to answer questions as we move through this. I'm sure as we go through the content, it will stoke some questions, but let's kick right into it. Of course, as a sponsor of Auscontact, it would be remiss of me not to mention who NiCE is and who we are. Hopefully by now, everybody on the webinar, particularly given that this is a contact center industry webinar, knows who NiCE is. But we've really started to focus in on what it is that is our core business, which is not just a CCaaS platform, right? It's not just providing contact center capabilities. It's not just routing calls and routing emails and messages and doing workforce management. And of course, Nadia, my colleague on the workforce management side of NiCE, is very passionate about that. It's all of it all at once, but it's all powered and infused with AI from the core right the way through to what our agents and customers interact with. And we're simplifying our message in the market, right? It's not about here's this feature, here's that feature, we've got this little thing, we've got that little thing, and this is why we're better than another CCaaS company. We actually now refer to ourselves as a CX AI platform. Automating experiences, right? Do I even need to speak to a human? Can I get a better service outcome or sales outcome? And can I improve my relationship with a brand without ever needing to speak to someone? As an organization, how do we orchestrate those workflows? We've been hearing about omni-channel for so long, and still almost nobody's doing it correctly because it's difficult to orchestrate and it's difficult to manage. And so how do we orchestrate those workflows? And most importantly, from my perspective, is how do we augment our workforce, right? How do we make sure that the humans are not seen as the kind of the manual workforce of the AI world, but rather they are elevated to be doing more intuitive things, empathy, maybe giving somebody bad news, maybe having to guide someone through a hardship process, or even helping somebody with a really important life event. These are the things that we want to be human, and we want to make sure that we're supporting them and augmenting them where we can using AI. We call this kind of enhanced human in the loop, so to speak. CX1 is all about engagement data. It's all about purpose-built AI, and of course, connected intelligence across the entire platform. Okay, enough of the sales pitch. Let's get into the good stuff. So there are two forces really shaping not only where we are today, but where we're heading tomorrow, and the value of human contact and how AI plays a part in that. Agentic AI agents or AI agents, but focused on agentic. Now, we'll get into what agentic is in a minute, but it's the buzzword within the AI world at the moment. And of course, human intelligence. And the critical thing that I want everybody on this call to really take away is, even from a software company perspective, even from sort of the market leader position that we find ourselves in, we still believe that agents are the backbone of CX, and AI makes them more strategic, right? It makes them more able to be able, makes them more able generally, right? So that's really where the focus is. In the past, it's really been about focusing on humans, right? Quality management, performance management, making sure that our workforce is managed in the right way. And it's been very, very human-centric. Maximizing profitability, compliance is all very human-centric, right? And as we start to move into the augmented world, we need to make sure that things like agent assist capabilities are performant, that our knowledge is up to date. Do we have the right content adequacy? Are we providing the humans who we are scoring on all of these things the right capabilities to be able to make them the best at what they do? And that's a really, really big focus. Many organizations that I speak to, when we start getting into knowledge, they kind of go, well, our knowledge is not great, right? Or we don't really focus on it, or we don't even have somebody who's overall responsible for quality of knowledge. And I'm starting to see that shift, because we're starting to see large language model driven agent assist become far more useful. It's really come leaps and bounds since we first launched Copilot for Agents about 18 months ago, almost 2 years ago. And so a really big focus on knowledge. And that means that we have to start scoring our AI agent assist counterparts just like we do our humans. And then we move into the world of AI agents, right, where we can really maximize things like customer experience, profitability. We start to see a lot of growth in what we can do, the reach. AI agents, they don't get tired, right? They don't lose focus. They don't make human errors. We can very much choose the type of AI for particular use cases. It doesn't have to be all agentic, all large language model driven all the time, despite what some others in the market may tell you. We need to pick the right use cases, the right AI for the right use cases, the right type of AI agents for the right use cases. I think that's a really, really important point. So I'll pause there. Fran, any commentary on that? Are you seeing sort of a similar, move in the people that you speak to around how do we infuse these things and how do we have them sort of work together?
Yeah, look, I think there's probably a couple of things, Ben, that you touched on there that, you know, probably worth a call out. The
Mm,
knowledge management component. Um, the great news is we are starting to see a much deeper respect for getting that right. So
mm,
I think that, organisations are really recognising the importance of the hygiene with the knowledge management. Um, I probably 6 months ago talked to organisations that said, oh, we've got on our roadmap, we're going to deploy chatbots. And
mm,
when we dug a little deeper, they didn't even have knowledge management. So,
yeah.
again, the connection between this push down of you have to get something that's AI so quick, here's a solution, to now
Mm,
saying, actually, what's our broader strategy? Um, so I think we're seeing a maturity in
hmm.
organizations. We're seeing them shift into having not just a better understanding of AI and its opportunities, but equally what's in their control to actually start working on now to help them be more ready. So I
Mm,
think that's a really good sign within the environment, within the market. Um, Probably the other part of it is, I would say, some of the fear that was early on.
mm.
There was lots of conversations in the media, in the marketplace, talking about, we're not going to need people. Um, but
Yeah.
really, actually, there's this maturity around if I have, ways to actually get rid of low hanging fruit or low value workloads, number one, it frees up my people to do the more strategic things. Sure,
Mm,
there's going to be some opportunities to get some scale and to get some savings. That's a great outcome. Um, but equally, it means we've got people positioned or organisations actually strategically saying, who are the people we want to talk to that we haven't got the space to at the moment? So there's a real
yeah.
difference in how they're driving and proactively driving customer engagement. Um,
Yes.
and probably the other thing we're seeing is, as consumers, agents in organisations are far more willing to kind of step in and say, "Here's a great opportunity. Let's
Mm,
embrace it." So I think across the board, um, there's this lesser sense of, I'm not going to have a job. Um, all those things that come with
mm,
that. And now we're actually saying, where can we use it best? How does it actually create a different type of capacity? And we only
yeah.
have to look at the changing, not just customer expectation, but customer profiles across our whole environment. And we know the human component is actually more important than ever for, I think you touched on it, vulnerable customers, people needing hardship conversations, etc. So
Yeah.
we need to free up more people to be ready for those conversations.
Absolutely. And I've just seen Tao Luxa
Yeah.
post in the chat and great point, right? We have to have a focus on accuracy of content, right? Because at the end of the day, um, if we hear feedback that, oh, my AI agent or my chatbot, it's not working, it's getting things wrong, I would bet what would I bet? Geez, I'd bet something pretty big to say that it's because your knowledge is either conflicting, it's unclear, or it's just plain inaccurate. Um, and a lot of that comes down to your governance and the platform that you use. I mean, I'm a big, obviously, advocate of our expert platform for knowledge. I remember very fondly, it was a little over 2 years ago now, Fran, that we were up in Brisbane, and Nadia and I were on stage talking about, is knowledge sexy or not? And I had one hand up in the audience of about 300 people that thought that knowledge was quote unquote sexy, right? And that opinion has dramatically changed because
It,
people are
it would
starting to
definitely
realize,
be
yeah,
different numbers now, I think, Ben.
we should
Because
retest
as you
that.
say,
Yeah,
it's the foundation, right? It
it is.
underpins every single component, even for your humans.
Yes.
So, again, I think in the past, we've been quite forgiving
Yeah.
because we, sort of have this tolerance level when it comes to human. Interestingly, we don't have any tolerance when it comes to AI.
I
the
will
team.
touch on that because
So
I love having this discussion, and we could probably
yeah,
spend the rest of the 45 minutes just talking about the philosophy of human error versus AI error.
interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, it is, and something I also want to say is that it is a foundation, right? And we're working on a pilot at the moment with a very large insurance company that I can't mention, where we implemented some generative AI based knowledge for their agents, and we got feedback that it was the best thing that the company's done for them. And some of these agents have been there for 25 years plus, right? They're
Yeah.
long timers. The best thing they've had access to for like 15 years, just because they can get answers to questions faster, more accurately, and more effectively. So here's the thing: we talk about customer expectations changing, right? And the real headline here is that non-agentic experiences just aren't going to pass UAT, right? If you're going out to market with plain old menu driven or really restrictive NLU or intent driven experiences, it's just not going to cut the mustard, right? Your customers will be able to tell the difference. They will be able to tell this feels old. This doesn't feel like I'm talking to Gemini or I'm talking to ChatGPT, right? The big model providers have done us a great favor in conversational AI, which is introduce the concept into everybody's lives and show that actually these could be really, really effective partners. So this guy here on the screen, this is Phil Heltwig. He's one of the co-founders of Cognigy, the company that NiCE just acquired. And his view on this is really strong, right? We have millions of people every single day um, interacting with ChatGPT, with Gemini, with Claude, right? With Perplexity. We're seeing large language models really become a part of people's search environment, right? A lot of people nowadays are not going to Google to search for something. They're asking chat, hey, where should I go in Europe this week? Over the holidays that's not too touristy, or how do I make a spaghetti bolognese like a traditional Italian nonna does, or whatever it might be. We're going to chat, we're asking advice. Some people are even using chat as a therapist or a chaplain, right? Which I maybe wouldn't recommend, but absolutely is something that we're seeing more and more in our daily lives. And the reason for that is because the experience has gotten so good that it's much easier for us as an interface to leverage conversational AI and large language models than it is to go through kind of the perceived effort of searching for something, finding the relevant link, clicking on it, reading the website, distilling it down, understanding it, and then making a decision. We are time poor. We are effort poor when it comes to these sorts of things. And we want something to know our preferences and personalize these outcomes to us based on our history, based on the memory and the context that we have, that we build over time, right? We build relationships with ChatGPT. We build relationships with Gemini. They know that 2 weeks ago that I went for a new driver fitting. And so now when I ask questions about golf clubs, it'll ask me, hey, how did the driver fitting go? Which one did you choose, right? Did you go the Titleist or did you go the TaylorMade? And it sort of updates the context and the memory. So when I ask questions about new clubs, it has that context. It knows the perspective that I'm asking from. And when we talk about scale, right, this is a mind-blowing graph. Twitter took 2 years to get to 1 million users. Facebook, 10 months, Instagram, 2.5 months, ChatGPT, 5 days to get to 1 million users. It is the fastest adopted interface of anything ever. And the reason for that is because it works, because it is an intuitive way to interact. It gives us language that makes us feel seen and heard. Now, can it be a little bit sycophantic? Can it agree a bit too much? Absolutely, right? And so you have to be cautious that you don't end up in an echo chamber with these sort of publicly available models. However, over time, things like content security and management have gotten better. Being able to understand when jailbreaks or prompt injection is being attempted to make it do something that we don't want it to do. And the controls around that and the governance and security has improved dramatically over the last couple of years. So I think that's also contributing to your point, to the comfort and the trust that we have. And we understand prompt engineering more. We understand what it can and can't do. We know that knowledge is important. We understand what information to feed it versus not. And we can't let it just run wild. We have to give it guardrails, right? I like to think of it like the more advanced they get, it's kind of like when you first explain to a new starter, okay, I need you to click on new email and then go into here and copy this and then put the address in that bar and then make sure all the spelling is right and then click send, right? And as that new starter gets better and better at their job, it's like, hey, make sure that you're using friendly and polite language. Make sure that you're focusing on solving the problem. Make sure that you're giving it more guidance on outcomes that you want it to achieve. And then as it becomes really experienced and it's got all of that memory and context, all you really need to say is, hey, make sure you're upholding the values of our customer service team, right? And it will know exactly what you mean by that because it's built up that context. And that's exactly how agentic AI works, and that's how large language models learn over time. So a little bit of an insight here, and for the people on the call who are a little bit more interested in, I guess, the models and the growth and the changes, what we've seen is an incredible amount of growth over the last 12 months, right? We've seen these huge improvements of around 40% scores. Now, we've just seen the new Gemini model come in and sort of perceived to blow a lot of these out of the water. These tests, they are benchmarks. They don't necessarily prove the efficacy for particular use cases. They are quite general. But really what we're seeing is it's an arms race, right? And for every new release of a model, it's leapfrogged in the next couple of months, right? We see another model come out and blow the previous version of a different model out of the water. And one of the big focuses for Cognigy, for NiCE Cognigy, is not locking customers into a particular model. You don't have to just use Google. You don't have to just use OpenAI or Azure or Mistral or Anthropic or any particular model, right? If you've got a particular use case or even within a same flow, you can use different models to achieve different outcomes. So it's very clear that flexibility is what our customers want. They don't want to just be using one model because, as you can see here, the efficacy and the performance of these models changes so quickly that if the business says, hey, we actually want to go down this route now, that's no problem. Let's configure some new API keys, let's set it up, and away we go. So that's a really big, powerful part of what we're seeing in the market as well. So I might pause there really quickly, just maybe for a couple of minutes, Fran, if there's some Q&As or any questions that have come up.
Yeah, there's an interesting one here from Darren Randall, and he's talking about, and I guess it relates to the AI agents that you were talking about before. Talking about previous role in a regulatory industry, what tools and guardrails does NiCE have to ensure that the automated agents are keeping the script rather than trying to fill in the gaps when pushing it straight to customers? And, we've heard a lot about hallucination and, again, you touched on the need for the foundational knowledge to really build it. And I know you're going to talk a little bit more about that tolerance around error. But yeah, I know you guys have done a lot of work in this space as far as, what are the guardrails and what's the recommendation with it? What's the business role in actually ensuring there's governance around it?
I think you've kind of touched on the answer in your question, which is what is the business role, right? How do you want these technologies to be used? Do you want an AI agent that is using a probabilistic model? And I'll talk about the differences in a moment to make sure that everybody's on the same page. But do you want an AI agent that's using probabilities to provide, must tells in a financial services use case? Do you want it to be providing really flexible and dynamic responses to T's and C readouts when you've just acquired a new phone from a telco or you've just bought a new product, right? It's not one or the other, right? It is actually both. We want our deterministic flows for particular use cases, in which case we have a lot of control, 100% control over what that flow looks like and what is said. But we also want, in certain scenarios, flexibility where we can guide the AI agent to achieve the outcome and not necessarily script exactly what has to be said. An example I'll use is in the insurance space, right? So, you've just had a crash, you need to raise a claim. All of the questions that need to be asked are pretty industry standard, right? What time of day was it? Oh, first of all, are you okay? What time of day? Where did it happen? What happened? Do you have the other driver's details, etc.? Um, the order that you collect those in is not necessarily the important part. It's that you're capturing the details. So being able to have things like, and Darren, to answer your question specifically, right, being able to have things like parameters inbuilt into an AI agent to ensure that the tool can only be executed, or the flow can only be executed once we have collected all those parameters, giving it examples of what that should look like and what kind of information should be provided. You can go very, very deep right into JavaScript or CognityScript within the platform and tell it exactly what you need to find, even reference it against CRMs to prove that the data is matching. There's a whole bunch of checks and balances that we can include as part of an AI agent flow that still feels and is very agentic, but is using some tried and tested APIs and data washing, I suppose, to make sure that we're getting the right information back and that we're not sort of making the wrong outcome, or we're not making the wrong decision. And at the same time, when we're looking at the way that we analyze and observe and build operations around these, because we're building things like goals and steps, and we can simulate conversations between two AI agents, and we can give, one simulated customer, we can call that customer Fran, and she's very high expectations, and she's difficult to deal with on the phone, and she doesn't take no for an answer. And then we've got Ben, who's happy-go-lucky, and whatever deal is up, he'll take it. We can simulate all of these different environments, and that gives us the ability to test and poke and prod at the edges and really understand where we need to maybe tweak a guardrail, where we need to be a bit more specific, understanding that the last line of a prompt is the thing that the AI agent pays the most attention to, so to speak, and then building in some really data-driven, deterministic, and parameter-driven inputs to make sure that we're on track and making sure that we do all the right things, right? So a lot of detail behind all of that, but there's a lot of tools and capability both in NiCE X1 and Cognigy that allows us to really tweak all of those individual items. But I want
So
to talk a
Ben,
bit. Yeah, go ahead, Fran. Go
sorry,
ahead.
I was just gonna say, um, at the end of the day, business is involved in determining
Yes.
what that governance process is. You guys would come in with some clear recommendations and some, this is how others are doing it type thing. But
Mhm.
business have a really key role to play in what actually meets the requirements of whether it's, depending on the industry. But actually, you can then tailor that according to what their needs are.
100%. And the business is really the driver of the value here.
Yeah,
As much as I love our counterparts in IT, when we start talking about these sorts of capabilities and really looking at customer experience, we have to have a focus on the contact center currently, the
yeah.
customer experience practice currently. What kind of outcomes, what goals, what scenarios are we trying to solve? And then building to that rather than building to individual line by line, intent driven, language driven outcomes. Because once you start doing that, you lose the value and the magic of having an agentic AI agent really kind of grow and learn. And there's frameworks that we leverage, right? The SPA framework, which is sense, plan, act, and reflect. Right. So being able to sense the input, being able to plan the response and understand what kind of tools I have at my disposal, leveraging an actual tool to go and solve the problem based on what has been provided, and then reflecting on that and doing that reinforcement learning or changing tact based on the inputs and outputs that we get, right? So lots of things go into the background of this. I would love to go into deeper with you, Darren, and anyone else that wants to get into the nuts and bolts, but I will move on for now. So here's some value drivers, right? And these are big percentages. So the old world of deterministic NLU bots, right? Now I'm saying old world because that was all we had, right? All we had was grammar-based NLU intent-driven bots where we knew exactly what each flow and each step of each flow did. There was no gray. It was all black and white. It was yes, no, ifs, thens. It was all very much logic-based. We saw pretty good containment rates, 43%. This is a particular customer, Flixbus, and it's also based on some aggregates of other customers that we've worked with that have gone from NLU to agentic. But the really impressive numbers are not only the increase in containment, the decrease in handover, and reductions in the unknown intents, right? So because we are able to be more flexible with how the AI agent interacts with the customer, we don't necessarily have to try to fit everything someone says into an individual intent bucket. So that's where we have more flexibility. We can handle things, we can adjust and be more dynamic. And we're seeing a lot of our customers now who maybe started with us a few years ago. Cognity's been around since 2016, so maybe they started a few years ago on NLU and getting great results, and now moving to agentic, they get even better results, right? They get a much more modern experience, and the numbers kind of speak for themselves. To go through, I'll build this out just in respect to time. When we think about traditional automation, right? I'll give a very quick analogy because I love an analogy. You know, I love an analogy. Is think about automation progression like cars, right? So level 0 automation is manual driving, right? Those of you on the call that might have a Toyota Land Cruiser 79 series, where you have to roll up and down the windows and it has a cassette player. That's level 0, right? There's no tech. You have to do everything yourself. That's no automation at all. That's agents manually doing everything. Level 1 is when we start to get into what we used to call RPA. Remember that? RPA. We have macros, we have scripts. We might have a batch job that runs and updates a outbound call list. We might have a little script that when we click submit, it goes and pulls a customer record and brings it back. That's level 1. And that's kind of similar to having just cruise control in the car. Once you move into level 2, we start to infuse a little bit of that AI in there, right? We start to have a little bit of AI-based guidance. Maybe we've got the cruise control that can keep us a certain distance away from the car in front and behind, or we've got our lane assist. Maybe it can kind of self-correct for us and manage a lot more of the functions using automation. And within our world, that looks like level 2 is where we start to look at maybe a little bit of probability based, a bit of predictive analytics, and then executing on the RPA element. As we start to ladder up into level 3, that's where you see the big step change, right? Level 3 is what we might consider a Tesla. So can do fully automated driving, but when it gets really difficult, it needs a human to guide it through maybe a busy street or a highly congested area or a tricky situation. Right? We don't fully trust it to do all of the work for us all of the time, and that's really where many of the platforms are at today. As we move into level 4, that's where we can fully hand over the wheel to the driver, to the AI agent, to the car in this scenario. But maybe it's only bound to a particular area of expertise. So the example might be that you've got the Waymos, right? So those that have been in the States recently, you've got Waymos in LA, San Francisco, Phoenix, where yes, they are fully automated Ubers. However, they are restricted to a certain geographical area, right? That's their domain because it's been mapped out. They know the area. They've got the domain expertise. And that's where we're kind of at with Cognigy is in that level 4 space where, yes, we can let it fully run and have it handle conversations end to end. It knows when it should escalate to a human because there's a reason to, but it is domain expert in customer experience, right? In customer service automation. It can't go and do your taxes and then also order you breakfast, right? It is specifically focused on customer service automation for our brands. Level 5 doesn't exist yet, right? Nobody is at level 5. Level 5 is where you can effectively tell the car you can drive in all conditions, all the time, all over the world with zero human intervention or training. Right now, the frameworks that to get us to level 5, they don't exist yet. They're yet to be invented. The technology, it's not there. So anyone that says they're at level 5 automation, ask them, would you be happy for your car to drive anywhere all the time with no human intervention at all? Probably not, right? So we are laddering up. We will get there, right? And I don't want to dive into the whole super intelligence versus not super intelligence. Are we just going to become the cats to the AI overlords? Don't know. But where we're at the moment is in between that sort of level 3 and level 4. And a lot of organizations are still leveraging level 1, level 2 technologies, right? So there's big jumps all through. But what I did want to focus on here is that the adaptability, the flexibility, right? This is where AI becomes really powerful. And we get a lot of happy customers, right? So 95% containment for certain use cases. We see reduction in AHT. We see improvements in CSAT. So these are real customers. There's lots on the Cognigy website. But if you'll indulge me, I have a quick video that shows what this experience could actually look like. This is a tech use case, so like a tech support use case, and it shows kind of that multimodal engagement where we have the personalities, we've got a contact center, you'll hear the sounds of the contact center in the background to give those comfort noises, and this is all built on NiCE Cognigy. So just give me a thumbs up, Fran, if you can hear the audio when this starts playing.
No, I
No,
can't hear
no
any audio.
audio. Hmm. Let me just double check this. It's always a fun experience, isn't it? We had a similar thing not long ago where the audio didn't work. I can't get, I'll share this after if I can't get it to
Yeah,
work.
we can send it. We can send it in
Um,
the
but
follow-up email.
give me one moment. So what you're going to see effectively is the ability for an AI agent to recognize the intent, and then be able to very effectively route to the right AI agent to be able to solve that. So if I can get this working, let me just try resharing. One moment. Stop share. And we'll go. Might have to share the actual window. Sometimes that's the trick. Okay, let's try again. If this doesn't work, we'll share it after. Anything
No,
coming through?
no luck. Sorry, Ben.
Rats. Okay, we'll figure out a way to share that with all the attendees. Effectively, what happens though is Tice, who is making this call, is able to explain to Alice, the AI agent, the technical support agent. So we've got different personas. That the headphones aren't connecting, a very common thing if you're working in tech support. As we go through and try to troubleshoot, he's sent a text message, and he's able to upload a picture to an app. Now, this is integrated with ServiceNow, showing that we're part of sort of a broader ecosystem. We see here that Tice takes a photo of his headphones. I've got the exact same ones. They can be a bit of a pest to pair. And what you see here is the flow moving through. So you've got your outbound SMS. In this case, it's via Twilio. I will say that NiCE Cognigy is agnostic to platforms, right? Of course, it will be integrated into CX1, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. And as we move through, we upload the photo. The AI agent can see it's a Sony headphone. It's analyzed that from the photo, and then it provides troubleshooting tips. 4 seconds to reset it. Yep, that's worked. Okay, great. And as we move through, Alice is then going to initiate a transcript, put that into ServiceNow, resolve that tool, and you see here that you've got the incident raised in ServiceNow. So that is completely automated AI agent flow for tech support, which is pretty incredible. So 4 things that I wanted to touch on. And these are the real keys for putting people at the center of the AI strategy. We've talked about what the AI strategy might look like, right? We've talked about what the future of AI might look like. But what are the key things that people on this call kind of need to take away to really understand how to make this happen, right? It's not just about buying the technology. It's not just about platform, although that, of course, that is important. Wayne here from 2 Degrees, who is a great friend of ours, he kind of gave me a quote for this, and his quote is, I think it's really important, right? Don't just focus on the tech. It's not about the tech. Of course, it is about the tech, but it's not about the tech. Focus on the hearts and minds, right? If you don't invest in them, all you've done is create a brilliant new modern interface, but the mindset behind that doesn't shift, right? And so what we've seen time and time again is some organizations really drive and adopt, and they do the change management, and they enable people, and they educate, and they explain what this technology is here to do and why it's here to help, and the value that they're going to get out of it. and they see massive benefits. The ones that don't, that maybe they don't have the right stakeholder engagement, maybe they just haven't done the enablement, maybe they're not sure or clear on the value, typically don't see the value, right? And it's not that the technology is doing anything different, right? It's all doing the same thing. It's the same outcomes. We see the accuracy is the same, but the adoption of it within the actual organization is the critical differentiator, whether or not that business actually recognizes the value. Do they see the AHT drop? Do they see the requirement to hire more agents? Do they care as much about churn? No, right? Because they don't see that value. Data is gold. This is my second point. So having access to really rich, really high fidelity data that you can make sense of, right? It's all well and good having it in a big spreadsheet that is meaningless without context. But being able to get automation insights and really understand what's going on in the organization from the one single agent, single conversation, all the way up to an entire business unit or the entire contact center, and look for those areas of opportunities, right? So what you're seeing on the left is what we call automation insights as part of actions within CX1. And it shows you, hey, it looks like you've got some opportunities here to maybe automate this flow. Maybe it's an IDMV process that's taking up 90 seconds of every call, and that's wasting your agent's time. Why don't we have an AI agent do that? Because it'll cost you cents on the dollar, and your agents can focus more on solving the customer's problem. When we see those areas of opportunity for automation, it's as simple as a few clicks and you get the AI agent built within Cognigy. And that's really where having the two platforms intimately integrated, as we will be doing, becomes really powerful. But it's not just about creating AI agents, right? It's also about creating augmented AI agent assist. So you can use that same concept to find areas of opportunity for operational effectiveness, cost to serve, customer experience. Some of the suggestions might be, hey, an AI agent to do X, Y, and Z will save you time or increase revenue opportunity. But some of it might be, hey, there's coaching that could be done here, or there's knowledge guidance. We see that these customers are getting frustrated because because the human agent is getting the answers wrong. So we could do coaching and we could do knowledge guidance. So we take that and we can actually push that into our Copilot for Agents suite and create agent assist capabilities using those same insights, right? So by having all of that in a single platform, you can actually have all of this linked together in a really beautiful dance of engagement and interaction, analytics, and then building this beautiful sort of AI agent versus human agent. It's not a versus anymore, right? It's better together. So that's really, really powerful. Data is absolute gold. And if you're not tapping into it, you don't have the ability to tap into it, you're missing out on opportunities. So this is what the world looks like within CX1, right? You've got engagement, you record all of the data, you store it away, we give you ability to analyze it, visualize it, report on it, extract it, do whatever you want to do. We can evaluate that data, as I've just shown in the previous slide. We can show areas of opportunity. We can look for trends. We can find sentiment gaps. We can find knowledge gaps. We learn from that, and then we implement that in our human agent groups, right? And so we're trying to provide that continuous improvement. Now that we've moved into the world of the Cognigy, NiCE Cognigy world, and we're having these two platforms come together as we speak, this is where we start to bring the AI agent side, which is fast deployment. We're talking weeks to scale up. We have the KPIs, we have the outcomes, we can optimize and we can refine, right? But the real power is when you start to connect these things together, right? So we use the AI agents to augment the humans. We use the humans to better train and provide guidance for what our AI agent should be doing. It is not an AI agent versus human agent situation, right? AI agents are not coming for humans' jobs, right? What they're doing is they're taking away all of the stuff that drives us mad, the cognitive load, the annoying calls, the manual work that we have to do on a day-to-day basis. And it allows us to focus on empathy, on connection, on rapport building, on maybe giving bad news, as I mentioned before, right? They're the things. Maybe being a judge, maybe the AI agent gets something technically correct, but maybe it doesn't feel fair to the customer, right? And so we want to speak to a human and kind of explain our situation or plead our case or ask for, hey, maybe just this one time, right? And that's where humans will always provide judgment, they'll provide empathy, and they'll provide connection, which is something that we don't want. Even if AI agents could do that, we don't really want them to do that, right? That's what we want humans to do. The next is the Frankenstein's monster, right? And I love this one because it is a critical thing in almost every organization I speak to. They have a Frankenstein's monster of solutions, all connected together. Now, from a technology perspective, it's very frustrating to manage, right? From a procurement perspective, it's expensive. But from an agent perspective, from a human perspective, it is so frustrating, right? Having to go to SharePoint for this and our knowledge base for that. And oh, in that particular product sits in this version of Salesforce, but that one sits in our old Dynamics. And you've got to know exactly where to go to get all of that information. That does not need to be the case, right? We can move into a world where we don't have the Frankenstein's monster anymore. We can kind of bring most of that technology together in a way that feels seamless, even if behind the scenes it's not necessarily seamless. We can present it to an agent through an interface that allows them to achieve their goals, to improve the outcomes, to make customers really happy without necessarily having to go and rip everything out, right? So I think there's a lot of scope for AI agents to be able to fill in the gaps between sort of systems that don't talk to each other very well. But at the same time, bringing more of those systems into a single place is going to allow you to kind of leverage and take advantage of those opportunities more effectively. And as I mentioned, the hearts and minds, right? So this is a message to all the people on this call. How many people have we got here, Fran? We've got, I think, 25, 30 people on the call. If any of you are in a buying role, don't just buy the tech, right? That's me saying that as someone that works for a technology company that hopefully you buy from. Spend as much time on the adoption, right? Make sure that the change management is part of the project. Make sure that people understand, create champions, right? Educate people, explain that it's here to help, that it's not here to replace. I don't want our customers to buy something from us and spend all that money and then turn around and say, Ben, it's not working. We're not getting the results because they haven't gone and focused as much on the hearts and minds and the education, right? It is absolutely both as important as each other. The technology is very important, but it is not as important as the adoption of the technology, which, you know, as a software company, we can obviously advise on and our experience we can bring to the table, but it is something that we need to make sure that we get right, or else, you know, a lot of these projects will ultimately fail. So I'll pause there because I do have some very exciting numbers around where people have done this and the things they've achieved, but I've been speaking for a long time, Fran, so I'll pause and take a moment in case there's any questions that you or anyone else wants to ask.
Yeah, look, I think you raise again some really important elements there, and that component around the people centered activity. Everyone on this call can actually, within their control, do something to contribute to that cultural shift, the change management, the people adoption, and often it starts just by having far more visible and transparent conversations internally. What's our direction? Where are we heading? Why is it we think this is going to work? Involve your people in some of those conversations around where are those early use cases. But equally, get them invested in understanding what this does for them. That concept of super agents, because the frustration has moved on. It allows them to be far more deliberate and strategic for customers. I know you talked about some of the results you can get. I think the other important thing for organizations to remember in building their narrative for senior executives, I always say, right, contact centers, we're part of our, being our own worst enemy, because every single metric is so visible, right? And
Yes.
everybody's got an interest in it. Everybody loves to look at those 15-minute intervals and say, but what about that? And we are eternal fixers. If someone says just do it, even though we're scrambling and we're killing our people, we still do it. So I think there's a real importance in actually building the right narrative. If we take, for example, something like AHT reductions, that's going to happen for some. In fact, we're going to hopefully see a whole lot of workload disappear simply because it can be automated. It can be handled by AI agents. We
That's
might
going to
then
push
see another
AHT
whole
up.
tranche. Correct.
Yep.
So I think that there is this real need, there's going to be a middle ground that talks about where we've generated some savings, not, 100% savings, but where we've got the agent assist work, where we've got the prompts, where we've got,
Mm,
the after call summaries. That's going to give us some real savings, and that's another bucket. But actually, the new stuff, the what's left, the high human need, we're actually going to push out. So it's really important that senior leaders really understand the full landscape and that they're
mhm.
really building that into the narrative that is not just for their own workforce. Because again, if you're telling people AHT is going to go down and you're still working in an environment where AHT is highly monitored, highly prescriptive, and micromanaged in some instances, if your staff don't start seeing that, they're going to start getting that fear again. So there's a whole
Yep.
lot of things that you really need to build into how you
I've seen it
talk about
fail.
this as a strategy. Same, right?
I've
Same.
seen it fail, Fran, where we've implemented auto summary at a customer, and we've seen that um, the notes are being submitted exactly as they're being produced, right? There's no changes being made, and the AHT hasn't dropped, right? And the question is, well, why? Right? What's going on?
Yeah.
And it's because the agents are sitting there reading it
Yeah.
intimately, detail by detail, because they're still being scored on the quality of the
Correct.
notes, right?
So
And
it's
then
the
it's
check the checker, right? In real
check the
life again.
checker.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
well, you're doubling up on the time at this point because you're now sitting there and after call work reading something that's been sitting there for 90 seconds because you're afraid that if it gets submitted and it's wrong, it's going to come back on you. Well, no,
Yeah.
actually, the platform owner or the admin or the product owner for that in the organization is now the one that should be scored on the accuracy of notes, not the agent, right? Because it's not the agent creating them, it's the platform. So that's where the
That's an
incentive,
interesting one though, right, Ben?
yeah,
Because
yeah, yeah,
again, you then couple that with a real investment from agents in customer. So they've got this,
mm,
embedded piece that says, I'm always going to be checked, so I've got to make sure it's right. So to make
yep,
sure of. But then you've got this other thing that says, but if it's wrong, the impact is on the customer. So that in
yep.
itself is a huge change piece.
Look,
Um,
I can get on
Straight up.
my soapbox about the purpose of notes, and I could do a whole
Yeah,
hour on
yeah,
why
yeah.
notes really are used as a coverall and aren't actually
Correct.
explaining what happened on that call, and that data points should be used in the platform that they're meant to be used in. For example, I don't need to have, spoke to Fran, account number 12345, ID and VEED. I don't need to have all of that. That's in my CRM, right? What did I speak to Fran about? What did we actually discuss and what was done? That should be in the note. And I get on my high horse about this all the time because it's those sorts of details that slow down the ability to adopt and really scale out things, just like as simple as auto summarized notes, right? So 2 degrees, right? They really lent into, hey, you don't own the note quality anymore. We do, right? As the platform owners.
Yeah,
Wayne, who those quotes are from, that was really his approach, and with Simon Lane as well. Really, their approach was, you guys don't own the quality of the notes. We don't want you to change a single thing. You're adding redundant information that doesn't need to be in there because it's in a different system. Don't change them. And if you change them, then you'll be in trouble, right? So they kind of flipped the incentive.
yeah.
And once
But it
that was,
requires that, right? It
yeah,
requires you to have a more holistic view that says, actually, what are those other frameworks and
mm,
processes internally? Because they're all internal.
yep,
And if you went back and said, why is it there? People would go, not sure. It's been there for 20
mm.
years. Um, but it does require that whole of organization
And
appetite.
a bit of courage as
Correct.
well, right? And
Correct.
so they
Quite
now,
exciting though, right?
I know, $4 million just from summarizing calls, right? And that's really
Crazy.
based on the fact that the additional volume that they can now handle, if they didn't have auto summary, would
Yeah.
require them to hire an extra 50 people to handle that.
Yeah.
So that's really where that saving kind of comes from. A couple of last points just on more scaled solutions from a cognitive perspective, some big brands that I think people can kind of get some ideas from. Allianz Insurance, a German insurance company. Cognitive obviously based in Germany initially, but they have rolled this out globally, and they're rolling it out in Australia right now. 12 weeks from kickoff to go live, 93% success rate, doing things like automation of ID and V, things like roadside assist capabilities as well. Really great experience that we've got with them. And there's a great case study and videos on YouTube and on the Cognigy website as well. and Lufthansa. Now, this one blows my mind. They do 16 million completely automated conversations so far this year. They see 80% automation rates, 12,000 messages per minute, right? Particularly in Germany, where there might be a snowstorm, there might be a strike, there might be inclement weather, people have to get their flights changed. They have 16 AI agents working in concert across a number of different capabilities within the Lufthansa group, achieving better outcomes for customers. So talk about scale, talk about complexity. This doesn't mean that you don't need human agents, right? This just means that the customer gets a much better experience and don't have to wait on hold for 30, 40 minutes, right? People get on the phone and go agent, agent, agent because they don't want to speak to the AI because it can't help them, but then they wait for 20 minutes to speak to a human, right? Well, to me, all we need to do is create better AI agents that people actually want to speak to, right? So lots of detail behind all of these. More than happy to pick it up with anyone that wants to. And if you want to connect with me, the reason that I was still working on the slides is because I figured out how to put a QR code on here. I probably should know how to do that, but I got a QR code. So if you're watching this on a big screen, scan that, connect with me on LinkedIn, or just shoot me an email, and I'd be more than happy to continue any of the conversations on any of the points that we had today. But that's all from me, Fran. I'll hand it back over to you for closing.
Thanks, Ben. I think, we could talk about this stuff forever, and we love at Auscontact, obviously, we worked with Cognigy for a really long time, so we love
Yep.
the merging of Cognigy and NiCE. We think it's a great partnership and super excited about where it's going and the opportunities that it presents to our members and more broadly to the industry. Thanks everybody for coming along. We will send out that video and some of Ben's slides in the post email to you all. Enjoy the rest of your day. And Ben, look forward to our next catch up. It could be about anything. Um, but it's always good. It's always interesting, and I always walk away learning something more. So thanks again, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you, Fran. Thanks for having me, and thanks everyone for joining. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye now.